Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jaja Fei, digital strategist for the art world, and I'd like to welcome you to today's talk, Luxury NFTs, Accessorizing the Metaverse, part of Sotheby's talk series organized in partnership with Jing Daily and Intelligence Squared. Today, we'll be diving deeper into the world of luxury NFTs, a world that I certainly continue to have a lot of questions about. We'll be talking about trends in the crypto world that have permeated the luxury industry and also figure out how exactly we define what a luxury NFT is. We'll address concepts around authenticating physical and digital works and why this whole concept of pairing the physical and the digital has really taken off in this industry. We'll also be exploring Sotheby's role specifically in the luxury NFT space, shining a light on a special upcoming auction, Gerald Genta Icon of Time, that for the first time pairs a physical watercolor watch designed by Gerald Genta, the Picasso of watchmakers, with NFTs. I'm delighted to be in conversation with three brilliant speakers who have each has had a fascinating insight in this space and can really break this down for us together. So joining us today from Ibiza, we have Karina Grant, CEO of Dematerialized. She's a published author who previously consulted and lectured around the world on retail innovation and the digitization in the fashion sector. In 2020, she co-founded the Dematerialized, an experiential marketplace for fashion and luxury NFTs. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Excited to be here. Thank you.
In Monaco, we have Frédéric Genta, the son of the renowned watchmaker Gerald Genta. Frédéric has held various senior leadership roles in Google, both in Mountain View and in Paris. Prior to that, he worked at Amazon and Orange in several countries around Europe. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Frédéric.
Thanks a lot.
And finally, in London, we have Sebastian Fay, Managing Director at Sotheby's. He's responsible for the company's businesses in Europe, the Middle East, Russia, India, and Africa. He's been very involved in Sotheby's entering the metaverse and expanding the auction house's digital collectible offering. Welcome, Sebastian.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So to kick us off, let's set the scene and define what exactly a luxury NFT is. So of course, NFTs are non-fungible tokens using blockchain technology to authenticate digital objects. And we now see that brands are using NFTs to attract, verify, and connect with customers within the luxury world. So in today's conversation, we're going to be looking at the luxury NFTs, which really occupy two different spaces. So on the one hand, you have a digital copy of a physical work, which in this case is the case of the upcoming sale, where the NFT is a digital copy of one of Gerald Genta's original watercolors. Then you also have the digital wearable. So like NFT shoes or dresses that can be worn by an avatar in some type of virtual space or metaverse, either in metaverse space, yourself on social media. So let's first define this idea of luxury. So I'd like to hear from all of our speakers today. As a small icebreaker, I'd like to ask all of you what luxury means to you in just one sentence. So Sebastian, let's start off with you.
I think luxury means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it's constantly evolving. But when we think of luxury, we think of quality and craftsmanship, goods, be they digital or physical, that are highly desirable and undeniably well-made.
Karina, what does luxury mean to you in one sentence?
For me, I think it's about having a very emotional reaction, something that really kind of triggers you in your heart and in your stomach. And typically that trigger is maybe created by what it looks like, what it feels like, and perhaps how difficult it was to get. I think those sorts of things are important for me.
Great. And Frédéric, what does luxury mean to you?
Well, for me, luxury is related to exclusivity, unicity. It's something special that defines a culture, a time that has risen above, I would say, other objects, other art pieces, and that is really a symbol and a very rare symbol of a time, of a culture, and of a country or of a lifestyle.
Great. So now let's turn our focus to this concept of luxury in the digital space. I'm really just struck by how quickly things have evolved, the speed in which the art world and the luxury market has adapted to merging the physical and the digital. But when you think about the history of the internet and this idea of the metaverse, this virtual space where people gather and interact and do all the things that we've already done as humans, whether it's shopping online or interacting and communicating with each other. What's really changed in the last couple of years is, of course, the pandemic has brought the whole world together online. It's been a mandatory computer training for the entire globe to connect. And all of this infrastructure has also emerged as part of it. And then with NFTs, we now have this whole economy wrapped around this concept of scarcity that didn't exist before, and therefore creating a market finally for digital art. So first, Corinna, I'd love to understand how NFTs have entered the luxury industry and whether you see this as a natural evolution or a disruption in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my perspective is firmly from the fashion perspective. And the first part of my answer is that definitely it's disruption. And the reason behind that is if we look at the first kind of luxury fashion NFTs, they didn't come from traditional luxury brands. They came from the Fabricant, a Dutch fashion house, and also Artefact, American fashion house, if you like, that's just been acquired by Nike. And those happened in kind of 2019 and 2020 respectively. And it really wasn't until last year and this year that we've started seeing the luxury brands that we're much more familiar with. So the European fashion houses and people like Gucci, Burberry in London, kind of experimenting in this space. So it's definitely disruption, first of all. And now I guess something that I see is people kind of looking to see what their competitors are doing. And I would say there's a kind of tension in, do we want to be the first to do this so that we're perceived as kind of innovative and able to connect with new audiences? There's also a revenue generation, obviously, opportunity for brands as well. And so there's a kind of tension with some of the brands that we speak to who are kind of thinking and wanting to kind of enter into this space. But definitely disruption first.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I would say the art world has evolved in a very parallel path where, NFTs were basically the art world that the crypto community has created for itself. And now everybody else is jumping on the bandwagon. So when we're talking about the art world, I'm also really impressed by how quickly the auction world has taken on this new space. So Sebastian, I'd love to turn to you and understand how NFTs are disrupting the auction house. And why is this a significant development for Sotheby's?
Sure. When I think of NFTs, I think of a digital good, a certificate of ownership for a digital asset. And rather than disrupting the art world, I see this as entirely complementary to the art world, a new medium for the art world, a new canvas is another way of thinking about it. This, for many artists, for many digital artists, the technology behind NFTs is the first time that they have been able to codify and bring their art to the marketplace, to assign value, to assign ownership. And by presenting digital art to the public in this way means that we as an auction house are able to expand the community of buyers, expand the artists that we deal with. And I see this as very additive and extremely complementary to the existing and traditional auction world.
Yeah, and I presume this applies so much to the upcoming sale, the Gerald Genta Icon of Time, celebrating the man behind some of the most sought-after watches in the world. They transformed the luxury industry with these visionary designs. Could you tell us a bit more about how the sale sits within our theme of luxury NFTs?
Sure. You referred to Gerald Genta as a Picasso of watches, and I think that's just the most fitting explanation. For those of you who are not as familiar with Gerald Genta's work, Gerald is one of the most legendary and unparalleled watch designer. The most important watch designer who has ever lived. And when Gerald created some of the most important watches of today, he did so by drawing an exquisite watercolor for each, which provided a blueprint of a masterwork of time that was created by various and famous watch companies in the future. As you can see on the screen now, these are the 3 highlights of the sales that we'll be having at Sotheby's starting in Geneva on the 10th of February, with bidding starting at 100 Swiss francs for each item. We have 31 out of 100 designs that have been selected from the archives of Gerald Denter's family vaults of the designs that he created that then became some of the most famous watches and most coveted watches that have excelled in the watch world since their creation. So on the left-hand side, you have the highlight of our Geneva sale, which is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and one of the most celebrated watches that Gerald made. Our sales will start in February in Geneva and then move to Hong Kong from the 17th to the 16th of March, New York from the 13th to the 27th of April, with around 30 lots in each sale. Each physical design will be accompanied by a digital twin, an NFT that has a digital representation of the design, plus a certificate of authenticity signed by the Genter family. And that source of provenance, the listing of and the recording of this item in an immutable way on the blockchain will accompany the physical design. They're going to be sold together as a physical and a digital design, and then continue to be sold together in the future, keeping a constant record from the family through collectors over time.
So, Frederic, I'd love to hear from you about how your father would feel about this sale, this ultimate combination of history and, the leading present-day technology, how this continues the incredible legacy that he left.
Yeah, I think he would be extremely proud of the upcoming auction for many reasons. The first one is that he was a genius. He was a designer. Those designs are the equivalent of buying the blueprint or the Ford T for cars or the first Macintosh for the computers. He was the one that invented, and when you are buying those designs and those NFTs, you are buying the majority of the 20th century watchmaking design industry. So I think he would be extremely proud. He would be extremely, I would say, excited about the disruption that we discussed before and the value added of NFTs, because we all know that internet was a machine for copy, was a machine sometimes for fake news, and sometimes even the art world is suffering from fraud, from issues. NFTs and art NFTs are bringing a concrete answer to make better art, better product, to guarantee the unicity and the authenticity of the product. And he was very attached to his Swiss roots, to the fact that product had to be authentic. He designed many products that were unique, and the fact we use NFTs are fully matching his conviction and his philosophy. And I think he will also be extremely excited to initiate a new trend, because these NFTs in art are going to be a lasting trend. There is going to be, I think, elements that are going to grow and grow in value because they match all the industry booming trends. We said the metaverse, this is going to come in years. We said the NFTs, we said the blockchain, and we said the need for unicity, for authenticity. So I think he would be proud. He would be proud to be able to share with some connoisseur a part of the watch history, and I would say the greatest heritage of the 20th century watch history. I think he would be extremely excited to be able to solve a problem in the art industry of technology, and he would be even more excited to be able to launch, to be at the beginning of a lasting trend that is going to bring a lot and a lot of value to the art industry, to the people who are going to go NFTs. And he would be really keen to start this new trend of value as he started many of the watches that today the top leaders in the world are wearing. I think that would be his feeling right now.
And for our audiences out there who may not be experts in the watch field, could you show us some of your favorite designs?
Sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Royal Oak of Audemars Piguet, which I'm wearing today. I'm a big fan of the Nautilus from Patek Philippe. And I'm a big fan also of the Mickey Mouse watches that were designed by Joe Argenta himself for his own company. I think two elements that have to be linked to those designs. The first one is that my dad design were so in advance, were so forward thinking, made so much of the standards today that the value of those watches has been increasing for the last 50, 60 years. It's the best proof that today, even more than 60 years ago, people want a Nautilus, people want a Royal Oak. So his design are even more accurate today than they were 60 years ago. So he was forward thinking and he really built the norm and the standard. And I have a special affection for the Mickey Mouse, because you have to imagine how a genius designer in Switzerland, with all the norms that were attached to the codes of the watchmaking industry, the mechanic was able to bring Mickey Mouse, and in this case, Fantasia, in this very conservative industry and still create something that was very unique and was a success. How I was able to understand the code and at the same time make them move forward. I think with those 3 designs and with the 100 designs that are going to be auctioned in the next 2 months, you are buying a unique piece of the watch industry. You are buying the unique design, what made the watch industry so successful in the last century. This is really a part of the watch history that is being sold with the most and the best technology.
So, Frédéric, we heard that the top 3 lots in the sale are going to be paired with NFT videos of the sketches being made. Can you explain your father's drawing process for us?
Sure. My father had his very unique talent. He's always started with the compass, with circles. So the blueprint for every design was the same. And then he became the most creative person in the world to be able, from those circles, to create very different design. And I think that illustrates a strong point that he always had, is that before breaking the codes, you got to master them. He had a training being an expert in watch design, but watch mechanic. He was a craftsman, so he had strong basis, a lot of Swiss rigor, and then came his Italian creativity after he has created those circles. So I think that's very interesting of who he was. He mastered his Swiss watch rigor, but with some Italian genius.
And it sounds like what this innovation is doing is creating a blueprint of this collection, right? It's you're basically creating a version that people can collect, in this very innovative way. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about the other dimensions that we were talking about in terms of NFTs in the luxury world, which is digital wearables. So Corinna, we're also seeing this trend where people are now buying digital objects to collect and wear in virtual spaces. So I'd love to understand more about why people are doing this. Do you see this continuing as a trend, and what is really the future of the digital wearable?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics to discuss. I think there's a few reasons why people want to kind of invest in these types of assets, as we call them. At Dematerialized, we have kind of a few different types of asset categories. So we have 2D collectibles, which are kind of like images, movies, I guess the JPEGs that some people kind of like talk about, but elevated in terms of status and what they look like. We also have 3D assets, which are either completely new representations of new to the world products. And again, one of the amazing things about a digital only asset is that the creativity involved. So you're limitless in terms of not being constrained by physics or geography or material types and things like that. And a 3D asset means that you can do more with it from a utility perspective. So, for example, you could wear it instantly on Snapchat using their augmented reality try-on. You could also have the garment bespoke, digitally tailored on yourself, which I can show some images of in a moment. And then also you can wear it on your avatar as well in various different kind of metaverse platforms or games that you kind of like so desire. So there are those are a couple of different reasons. And then also, I think something which is also been mentioned by Sebastian, which is an important part of the sale and an important part of where we are in the adoption process of digital and virtual goods, is the pairing together of a digital asset with a physical asset. So we have an example of a recent collection that we just did with MCQ, the UK brand. And here we have a one of one, which was auctioned. It had various different components to it. So it had a physical item, which we describe as a phygital, because it's a merge of physical and digital. That's a one of one, bespoke, made to order, as I said, and then that comes along as a kind of NFT package with a number of other 2D collectibles and 3D collectibles. So you can port this particular hoodie into different environments like Decentraland and port it into certain games that use Unreal Engine if you kind of so desire. And I guess one of the things that's interesting at the moment is, depending on the kind of segment of customer, that typically depends maybe the main motivation to why you might want to purchase a digital asset. So for example, we find that fashion consumers are more likely to want to wear it on themselves, first of all. So again, I can show you a couple of different examples of, this is a 3D artist, Steffi Fung, who has been superimposed with one of our very first collections with Artifact and the Fabricant, who I mentioned before. I have another example which is from the British Fashion Awards in December, where Kirsten McMenemy, the fashion supermodel, is wearing an Institute of Digital Fashion NFT, again, that has been superimposed in post-production, that people like to share on social media, etc., to show that kind of connoisseurship of what they've created. And then I have another example of being able to wear your NFT on your avatar as well. So there are a number of different ways that you can kind of flex what you've been able to kind of create or score on kind of different platforms.
So earlier we were talking about how the digital community is sort of already in this space, but then of course brands came in and started launching their own projects in the metaverse, especially in connection to selling luxury goods and also being active in this space. So why do you think brands are doing this? I'm now also seeing, in New York, Fashion Week is now introducing NFTs with invitations to their shows and digital wearables as part of what presumably was just a physical experience, is very much now this integrated space that you've just described.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a multiplicity of reasons why brands kind of want to experiment in this space. I think if we trace it specifically to luxury brands generally have an amazing archive of digital artifacts, physical garments. They are really kind of sitting on an amazing kind of amount of value. And I guess when we're talking about what is the tangible kind of like benefit of an NFT, effectively that kind of certificate of authenticity and then that traceability and provenance of authorship and ownership over time and the ability to generate royalties for the creator over time as well is something that could be hugely attractive to certain brands, because it means that for many years, brands like Hermes, Chanel, etc. have tried to figure out ways, when something is, I guess, similar to the art world, sold a number of times, how is there a way to kind of maintain a portion of that sales over time? And I think one area that hasn't particularly erupted yet, but I predict is going to be very big indeed, is that of digital archives and digital vintage. And we have a collection about to launch with some British emerging designers who are recreating an iconic piece which was first released and shown in 2019. And the pattern and their kind of digital and physical process, as you see here on the slides, which is a really kind of beautiful configuration and a kind of hybrid creative process of digital and physical, is now moving its way into the collection that we're going to release. So the collection will have collectible elements, so videos, JPEGs, and 3D garments, and then also there will be one-of-one fidgetals, so 3 dresses will be available. And I think that kind of ability to get something that you wouldn't normally be able to get, it really links back to the beginning of the meaning of luxury, and one of the things that is important there.
Something that I'm always curious about when it comes to emerging technologies is the customer and the user. And so I'm really curious about, is the customer who is now buying these digital assets eventually also going to be the same person interested in the physical object and vice versa? How do these worlds converge? Sebastian, I'd love to hear from you about that.
Sure. The historical significance of this sale within the watch world is, just cannot be underestimated. This is the first opportunity to be able to purchase a original Gerald Genta design. As we mentioned before, the blueprint for some of the most historical significant watches. And by coupling with the NFT, we're ascribing additional value as well in that technology, in that authenticity, in that record. And beyond that, we are also going to be offering to store the physical design for those collectors who would prefer to trade the NFT on the open market to allow trading simplicity. This is the first NFT offering at Sotheby's in our luxury business. And the significance and importance of that is also a first, and very fitting for this to come with Gerald Genta as well. As Frederic was saying before, Gerald was always ahead of his time. He knew what watch collectors wanted before they did. He was a trendsetter, and it seems only so fitting that we have decided to take this opportunity to link the NFT with the physical in this way. In terms of the worlds colliding, so in our experience so far, we started selling NFTs back in April of last year. We sold around $100 million worth of NFTs since then. And from the beginning, we were bridging the gap between the crypto native world and the traditional art world. And over that time, we have found that around 25% of the bidders in our sales have been traditional art collectors who have been starting to collect on the digital side and have been intrigued by this new technology and have bridged that gap themselves, taken that leap into buying digital goods. And we expect to see that continuing. That 25% of the bidders bought 44% of the lots that we sold last year. So that converging is very much happening. I think this sale is going to really attract both worlds together, and we will see people who are valuing both the physical, the digital, and those who are valuing both together first and foremost.
And Corinna, as it pertains to the fashion world, do you find that the digital and the physical customer is now also converging and becoming interested in this confluence of media?
Yeah, I think there's a very interesting kind of synergy as well there. I think if we look at the crypto native customers and at the gamers, they have been very au fait with buying and investing digital goods for the last 10, 15 years, particularly in the gaming sector. And what we see now very similarly is that initially a large proportion of our customers on Dematerialized were the crypto native customer. But every time we start to launch with a brand, particularly a luxury brand like Karl Lagerfeld or another one which is more kind of well known in this space, we're starting to get people buying their first ever NFT, and they're very excited about it. So I think, yeah, there's that kind of merging and that kind of confluence, and I think eventually there will be a growing kind of understanding that one of the narratives at the moment is that if it doesn't exist physically, then it can't have a high value. And I think that's something that's definitely being challenged with NFTs, and rightly so.
One of the most exciting components about NFTs for me is that this technology now enables artists and now brands to have more control over their work, over their licensing. So we're now finally seeing technology as this design solution to finally resolve the issue of how we can monetize and help digital artists who are creating in this space. So Sebastian, I'd love to hear from you about what opportunities you see for creators and collectors who now finally have more control over provenance and authenticity.
But if you think of the meteoric rise in the sales of NFTs over the last 12 to 18 months, this is bringing digital art to the fore of the market, where digital art is not new. Digital art's been around since the 1960s, but the issue with without the advent of NFT technology being able to provide that immutable and recordable ownership and authenticity back to the original artist, there was very little marketplace for digital art, and it remained largely housed by institutions and museums rather than bought by collectors to the extent that we're seeing today. And it's this sort of, I think, as an explanation, as an unchangeable birth certificate for that digital art, being able to provide that in the form of an NFT that can then be traded on platforms without the friction of what we see in the trading of physical works is why we're seeing this mass adoption and historic lag of value rising very quickly over this recent period. So it gives a huge amount of scope for digital artists to show, to exhibit, to trade, to demonstrate the ownership and pass that title of ownership to the collector. And that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's this huge opportunity that digital artists didn't have before, and it's really about introducing this concept of scarcity. But when you think about the luxury and the fashion world, I feel like it's almost the opposite problem, right? So, Corinna, how does this concept translate into fashion? It's, I would say, more about thinking about authentication of pieces that, previously you might have issues of counterfeit goods, or really just thinking about, how you authenticate designers in this very different way.
Yeah, I think Sebastian said it very well with the birth certificate. I often refer to it also as a passport, or the NFT being the best receipt you never want to lose because the amount of information it has within it. And I think we're at a very kind of interesting point in time at the moment where, exactly like you mentioned, people will be able to use NFTs as a way to de-risk their purchase, particularly if it's a high-level purchase, particularly if it's maybe a vintage piece again, to check that it is authenticated to the brand that it's meant to be, or the creator that it's meant to be. And I think also that we should be thinking about the opportunities from a kind of storytelling perspective as well. So being able to, again, if we converge the metadata or the information which is within the smart contract of an NFT, which again is one of the things that makes it very special, and it's the thing that it makes it be able to be trackable and traceable, is why can we not add extra content to that over time? Whether that's something, again, about the inspiration behind the piece, whether that's something programmable from a technology perspective, so that imagine you had a digital piece or a physical piece that was able to change over time, just as we kind of upgrade our iPhones and other pieces. There's no reason why that can't do that. And also looking at interesting things like breedability of different things. Again, if we look at the history of fashion, we've often seen people like Schiaparelli kind of collaborating with different artists. There's no reason why we couldn't be able to do that in a NFT kind of perspective as well. So kind of mating, if you like, or breeding an artist with a piece of work. I've gone slightly off topic here because I think it's just a next kind of generation, an exciting thing that we can do over and above the authentication and the provenance. So it's a new opportunity.
Some of the most exciting but unexpected projects I've seen in this space have come from museums who have created NFTs out of very classical and historic works in their collection. I usually wouldn't expect, like a Turner painting or, this icon of classicism to come into the present. So Frédéric, I'm curious to hear from you about, again, this pattern of old and new. What are the benefits of bringing together this both very new and classic asset class together, really combining and celebrating tradition and innovation at the same time?
I think the art NFTs, and especially the auction coming, are bringing the best of both worlds. That's why they have so much value for the future buyers and for future clients. It has, at the same time, very unique piece, authenticated by my family. There's never going to be another Royal Oak design. There's never going to be another Nautilus design. And it's written in the blockchain, and it's one and for all. If anyone in the future claim a new Royal Oak design by Gerald Junta, the blockchain will, in the second, tell that it's not true. They were just one and only. So it's kind of buying like in museum, like you said, you're buying a part of history. At the same time, this new class of assets is much more liquid. You could have the design maybe stored somewhere and sell the NFT, sell the right of, sell the digital design, sell the certificate. And I think it's a great class of assets because it's linked to great piece of art, like my dad design. But at the same time, it provides a liquidity, a transparency, a capacity to be bought and sell, a market liquidity that is pretty unique, that is the same as an equity. So I'm very confident that this class of assets will be based on classic art compared to other blockchain industry that are just based on the usage of blockchain. This is based on unique piece of art, three piece of art, but for the first time in the art history, has the capacity to be much more liquid, so to be much more, to have a much greater potential of improvements. That's why I think it's going to be a lasting tendency. And this is where the value of art and the future value for creators is going to be. It gives the creators a unique capacity to get more of their creation, to be more inventive, and for the buyers to get unique products with a great capacity for value. So I think this class of assets is going to grow and grow and grow, and will be growing even more with the metaverse. So it's a great investment for the future, and it's great to be part of the history of NFT and part with Sotheby's of this very first part. So I think it's extremely exciting, and it's moving in a direction where the world is moving now.
So clearly, there's lots of opportunity in this space, and we've talked about how NFTs have finally benefited the artist, the creator. But what about the collector? What are the risks and also opportunities that collectors and buyers should be aware of? Sebastian, I'd love to hear from you.
So as a very rapidly evolving medium and marketplace for the art world in NFTs, there is a natural side to caution that some collectors are taking. But when you look at the risks of NFTs, they are rather slim. And I think where Sotheby's comes into its own in this space, in just like we have, a 278-year history in the traditional art collecting, of providing a curatorial role within the NFT space. So with our experts who are assessing the NFT space, the opportunities of what we bring to market, being selective, focusing on quality, on artists and on projects that we feel have longevity, we bring together the best of what is on sale and what can be brought to market at any point in time. So that brings a lot of opportunity, I think, for collectors as well to be able to select and have confidence in their purchasing. But as a collector, being able to now buy digital assets, digital goods, the works of digital artists. In the case of the Genta sale, to have this digital record of ownership of something coming all the way back to the Gerald Genta family, I think provides a huge amount of opportunity to collectors to think differently about their collecting and collecting tastes today.
So I have one last question that I'd like to ask all of our speakers, and I think it's something that everyone would like to know about this NFT space, which is this going to last? Will it stand the test of time? Is it a fad or is it the future? Corinna, let's start with you.
Yeah, I love this question again because fundamentally it's definitely the future. We're at the very beginning of this journey, but NFTs, by their very nature, change and educate people into understanding what digital ownership means. And I think from a wider kind of cultural perspective, what's exciting about the opportunity that NFTs offer is that we're finding new forms of aesthetics, new forms of communities, new ways that people are kind of linking together with each other. So for me, I'm firmly, this is not a fad, this is a fundamental part of the future.
And Frederic, how about you, fad or future?
I think early present. I think today all those technologies are ready. I think the greatest artists are coming to this technology. So I think it's the beginning of a new area, but it's coming now. It's coming now, and I think when the present is early, you have to be sure that you are there the earliest when it's in the present. So early present starting now, and a long-lasting trend.
And finally, Sebastian, what do you think?
Well, we don't have a crystal ball. When we look at the depths of the market, the interest in NFTs, the growing adoption, when we look at this marketplace as a whole, or the community that is growing behind it, it doesn't have, to me, the characteristics of a market that is going to bubble and burst. I very much firmly see this as being the future. I think that we are at the early adoption stage, and with the investment, the number of new artists that are coming into this space, I think there's a lot that we are still yet to see. And the crossover that we were talking before of people coming into this space and feeling confident and comfortable in buying is starting to, and collecting is growing by the day. I see a huge amount of energy, investment, and a long future for how this market will develop from here.
Well, it sounds like everyone's in agreement. Definitely something to watch. that's a wrap for today. I really want to extend my thanks to Corinna, Frederique, and Sebastian for their amazing contributions to today's event, and also Sotheby's and Intelligence Squared for putting this all together. Head over to the Sotheby's website to find out more about the Gerald Genta Icon of Time sale, which opens for online bidding on February 10th at 10 a.m. CET. And if you want to learn about NFTs in the luxury NFT space, Jing Daily will also be releasing a report on luxury NFTs called NFT Collaboration, Luxury's Metaverse Opportunity. It details the importance of combining communities and creativity when moving into the NFT arena. Jing Daily is also launching a new podcast later this month. The first episode will explore the luxury NFT market and features our speaker from today, Corinna Grant, among its guests. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you everyone for joining us.